Greetings, YouTube and buddies. This is Ultimate23Dragon, and this is a video I did not plan on doing, but okay, so here's the backstory. My male counterpart on YouTube put out a top 10 countdown video recently, talking about what he believes is the top 10 most iconic moments in the NASCAR world in the 2010s. I watched said video, and I was here and there with it because there were some things I would have taken out and put in instead. I told him that, and he wanted to see my version of it. So I thought about it, and the more I thought about all the things that happened in NASCAR that had huge implications one way or another, the more I found I can actually do a top 20 on it. So, this is that video. So, for my male counterpart and all of the other YouTubian buddies, this video is for you guys. This is Top 20 Countdown. My version of NASCAR's most iconic moments in the 2010s. A.J. Allmendinger's drug suspension from 2012. It sounds like a simple situation, but the ramifications that came from it were huge. Right before the 2012 Coke 0400, A.J. Allmendinger was, temporarily suspended for a substance abuse violation. This was the first suspension for a Cup driver since the now infamous Jeremy Mayfield debacle 3 years prior. And like Mayfield, it was announced right before the race. Sam Hornish Jr. was flown in as an emergency replacement to race the 22 Penske Ford that night and for the rest of 2012. AJ and his team got together with NASCAR to try and figure out the problem. But no solution would get figured out until AJ retraced his steps to figure it all out. According to AJ, when he was working out with a buddy of his, he made note of the fact that he was suffering from fatigue and sleep issues like he has been throughout all of 2012 at that point. His buddy offered what he said was an energy pill, and AJ felt better. A few days later, AJ was randomly selected for a drug test, and the A sample came back positive, which is where the story started. After retracing his steps, AJ figured out that the so-called energy pill was actually an Adderall pill. The ramifications of this incident are bigger than what most people remember. First of all, and most obviously, AJ lost his Cup ride with Penske Racing, the team he always wanted to race for and the team he had started with that year, replacing Kurt Busch. However, it wouldn't be the last time those two would team up. Those two got back together on a few occasions in 2013, including the Indy 500 and 2 nationwide races, in which in both those nationwide races, AJ won. More importantly for his sake, the time off gave him time to find his happiness again. Between the sleep problems, stress, pressure, and other factors, AJ wasn't in a happy place in life at that point. The time off gave him time to find that happiness again before making a true return to NASCAR. So good on him for that. As for the 22, it was originally believed that Matt Kenseth was going to take that ride since he was on his way out of Roush Racing after 2012. However, Kenseth decided to go to Joe Gibbs Racing and instead take over the 20 car after JGR ditched Joey Logano, leaving Logano to get the 22. Hence the start of one of the biggest rivalries in the decade. But more on that later. The suspension from one driver changed basically everything for not only him, but 2 other drivers as well. For the better and the worst. And that is what makes it an iconic moment to me. Hence why it made the list. The TV contract commentary ordeal of 2013. Things were very complicated in terms of the networks since the turn of the millennium. In 2001, Fox and FX and NBC and TNT got the contract. Then after 2006, NBC and FX left, and ESPN and ABC came aboard, and stayed that way in the beginning of the 2010s. But with some problems. If you've been a part of the NASCAR YouTube community for a while, you may have heard of the commentary wars. multiple old guard YouTubers put in their input as to which network sucked the most. Some showed evidence suggesting ESPN was the worst, while others showed evidence suggesting TNT was the most, and another bunch showed evidence suggesting Fox was the worst. During that time, most people tended to agree with those who said ESPN was the worst while bashing and laughing at those who said Fox was the worst. Hence where the issues came concerning the issues outside of the community itself. In 2013, a deal renewal was up and offers and bids were made with all of the networks, both current and new. Within that, though, something shocking happened. NASCAR had decided to stay with Fox while ditching both ESPN and TNT for a return to NBC and NBCSN for $4.4 billion. So to me, NASCAR kept the absolute worst network in the deal, ditched the other two, and I was not the only one who was not happy. As a result of this, and the fact NASCAR was introducing yet another change to the points format, both ESPN and TNT wanted out of the deal a year early, and have NASCAR just give their parts of the season to NBC starting in 2014 and not 2015. No deal managed to happen, so both TNT and ESPN ended their tenures in 2014. TNT begrudgingly, and ESPN respectively. But the ramifications of this were huge when you think about it long term. Neither network has looked back on NASCAR in any way, shape, or form. ESPN has seemingly cut not only NASCAR, but all forms of motorsports, with the NHRA leaving them for Fox Sports 1 because of a deal where the NHRA can produce their own programming, which of course is backfiring. In addition, IndyCar recently left them to go to NBC and NBC Sports Network, which is here and there depending on who you ask. Yes, ESPN has Formula One now, but you have to remember that what is shown is the world feed, not something done by ESPN themselves. TNT, essentially in terms of sports, has become the Major League Baseball and everything basketball channel. Unfortunately, it's doubtful that both networks would want NASCAR back, despite how much the fans would want even those networks back compared to what Fox has finally been exposed to being after all these years. In addition, Fox, which for the longest time I've said has been the overall worst network since the original big TV deal in 2001, just continues to prove me right time after time after time. And it's gotten way worse over time in addition. People are finally starting to understand what I've been saying and have even wished for ESPN to return, along with other networks like CBS. However, would ESPN honestly be willing to return at this point? Would TNT? I honestly don't think they'd be willing to. But we really won't know until the next new deal in the mid-2020s.
That's fine and dandy.
The return to The Rock. It was for only 2 years this decade, and it may have been in the Truck Series, NASCAR's best yet most forsaken series, but NASCAR did something the fans actually liked. A return to a popular track which should have never been taken off the schedule. 2004 was the last year up to this point in time where a Cup or Busch race was held at Rockingham. A lawsuit ordeal regarding the Texas Motor Speedway resulted in Rockingham losing a date to Texas. Since then, NASCAR never returned there. Until 2012. The Truck Series had the task of a return to Rockingham, which was recently purchased at that time by former driver Andy Hillenberg. And man, the response was huge. Both races were very nice and made the fans happy. In the end, though, the relationship was short-lived. They did not return after the 2013 race, and multiple deals later on made everyone question whether NASCAR will ever come back. I think it will. NASCAR returning to a track that many had written off just may be a sign that when the schedule realignment that was promised happens in the early 2020s, an old favorite, maybe multiple old favorites, can make a well-deserved full-on return. If so, NASCAR's temporary brief return to Rockingham via the Truck Series will be even more iconic than it is now. Especially if it was just a taste of what NASCAR's reconnection with Rockingham would be. Or maybe, in addition, other old tracks. What in the world has happened this decade to Denny Hamlin? Just... At the start of 2010, Denny Hamlin only had a couple notable incidents in his career beforehand. Kyle Petty in 2007, Brad Keselowski in 2008, and depending on who you ask, even Howie got his cup right when Jason Leffler was basically used as a guinea pig for owner points throughout 2005. No, seriously, I know a few people, especially one in particular, who thinks that was, and still thinks it was, the case. And this one person in particular has hated Hamlin ever since. In one or both on-track instances, depending on how you feel about the Hamlin-Petty situation, Denny was in the wrong. But people still wanted to like Denny because he was likable and felt real. And then 2010 happened, and what Denny has shown us on a consistent basis ever since is that he is a real, whiny, idiotic, moronic complainer of a baby. Which was par for the course for most of Joe Gibbs Racing's drivers in the 2010s, as that team became the most despised team in the 2010s, and maybe all time. But Denny and Kyle Busch being on the team for the entirety of the 2010s had JGR take that despised way of driving to a new level. Especially with the addition of other infamous dirty trash drivers like Matt Kenseth and Carl Edwards, and even Brian Vickers when he was in the Nationwide Series. We expect it from Kyle because he's been a proven whiny, spoiled, dirty racing pest for years, and everyone knew that about him even before the 2010s. But we just didn't want to believe it with Denny. However, as the decade went on...
We're going back to green flag racing this time.
No,
look out! Crash on the front side. Clint gets collected. Oh, the 98.
Correct.
And the 99 of Trevor Bayne.
There's Kyle Busch climbing out.
That's
and
actually
walking.
the 11 hauler he's walking up into.
They've been warned for a long time, way before Richmond. So this is not something that, oh man, we got, you know, they just told us halfway after Richmond and going in the Loudon that our car's wrong. They knew it was wrong way before that, you know, and I felt like they wanted to get everything they could. You know, what did they have to lose, really? So, you know, you almost can't fault them for that.
Flash forward to Saturday morning's practice. Kevin Harvick, one of the Childress drivers, follows Denny Hamlin out onto the racetrack and basically appears to be trying to send a message.
He is upset.
I don't like what you said, I think was the message. A little contact, a little more contact, a little more contact out on the racetrack. Both drivers called off the track by NASCAR into the garage where discussion ensued.
First of all, I got his ride because of his name. Second of all, you got to take advantage of the opportunity.
Gosh, it's just so hard to pass, and you're going to hear it a lot this week that got a lot of work to do to get these cars to pass each other and things like that. You know, really, it's aerotight is a huge, huge deal. And
Wait for it. Wait for it. Pow.
You see the crew from the Joe Gibbs team. They were former Joe Gibbs Racing teammates, and Michael Waltrip, you said that Logano wouldn't take the apology over the radio lightly, and the pushing is coming to shoving here.
Hamlin edges ahead. They touch. They touch, and here comes Kyle. Logano on the wall.
my beef with Kyle is he has a lot of opinions about a lot of drivers, but he's never once talked to any of them. So, you know, to be an analyst, you got to be in the trenches, finding out the stories. I got here on hard work and winning. I didn't get here like he got here.
Come to pit road for a pass-through penalty. Whoa! Contact for the lead. lead. Hamlin into the wall. Oh, and collects another one. That's Junior up in turn 1, I believe.
See, the 11 gets a little bit loose there. A little contact, not much. A little bump.
And it goes 4 wide for a minute.
Now on the cool down lap.
Yeah, I can understand them a little bit. They were having some contact at the end of the race. But not sure about some of this other stuff.
I'm not sure. We'll watch right here again. See her back there, and here comes Denny. I think Denny dove out from behind her. She didn't realize he had moved out from behind her. She started to go left, and he was there. It sort of, it's just in that spot. It's what Kevin Harvick was so upset with Joey Logano about. You can bump me some places, but there are some places you can't do that.
It worked as long as they were going in a straight line.
As long as you're going straight, yeah, but I'm just...
All right, watch the 11, Hamlin.
Yeah.
Right on the back of Patrick.
Yeah.
And
just a little bump in the wrong place.
What are you doing? Danica, Seriously, you did the same thing in practice. You did the same thing.
I did not.
You get on my left rear and it spins me out. You did the same thing. Tighten what up? Nobody else left me with a problem out there.
Nobody has your back like I have. Stop.
I
Listen to me.
So.
Listen to me. But I can't give you an extra 2 feet because
dude,
it's
you give me nothing. You give me nothing. It spun my back end around.
I understand. It's because you're loose. It's not my problem if you're loose, Danica.
Nobody else did it to me.
Danica.
It happened twice. The same person, the same way.
But guess what? I didn't hit you either time.
Way.
I didn't hit you either time.
Well, then apparently you don't have to actually hit me. I like you, Denny. You're my friend.
I know. You're my.
I don't understand.
I get it. But does it mean like, oh my God, she's loose, I can't run next to her? What should I do?
It just means don't be up my on my left corner again.
So don't get close to you with 3 laps to go.
You did it in the straightaway, and then you did it in the corner that time. Both times, exact same result.
That's 2 this week, bud.
Tony, I never touched her. I never touched her. What do you want me to do? Not run close?
You'd watch the video of it.
Do you not want me to run close?
You just don't need to get so close that it turns me.
I'm friends with you.
I like you. I just don't understand it.
I didn't hit you either time. I didn't hit you either time. I didn't hit you either time.
That's fine, and eventually I was going to get back around him anyway, but same thing. I was a fender ahead, and he drove in there knowing that, you know, he was going to have to hold me low to hold the position, and I just washed up into him. But that's 2 guys on a short track race for a win.
He spoke after the race. It sounded like he did not agree with it, didn't think it was clean racing, and stopped short of vowing payback, but it sounded like there may be that coming.
Kyle Larson out in front of Richmond. And up into the wall goes the 78 hard. Caution will come out.
They tell me I'm a hero around here. Today I was a clown.
Elliott diving, trying to block. Down the backstretch again. Less than 3 to go. The bumper to the back of the 24. Elliott goes around. Hamlin takes the lead, and the caution comes out. Take a look at this. It looks like the 24 of Chase Elliott. Now you're seeing it. 24 and the 11 having a difference.
You can hear the crowd.
Racing hard for the win here, Denny. What happened?
I got in the back of him and he spun out. But trying to get a race win, but you know it's everybody wrecked everyone there at the end. It was complete, you know, bullshit chaos, and just I got in the back of him and he spun out, and somebody got in the back of me and I wrecked too. It was just a mess at the end. I mean, everybody was doing the exact same thing.
Over 130 miles an hour as they enter turn 3, and bumper goes to the back of the 11 again.
Way up the racetrack.
Oh, into the wall goes the 11. A 7/10 of a second lead over Martin Jr. And there went the tire. The 11 goes into the wall.
Hey, stop! 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 Quit! Get back! Stop!
stop. It ain't gonna work right now, bro. Listen to me. It's not gonna work right now.
Denny just kept getting worse. When he made that comment in 2018 that 70% of the garage area takes Adderall and then tried to backtrack it claiming it was a joke, I've heard that excuse before, nobody was sympathetic towards him, especially Bubba Wallace.
He might need to take some Adderall for that one, but
Denny, Kyle Petty may be a proven idiot, but you're an even bigger idiot than Kyle ever has been. And that says a lot. And that's why the downfall of Denny Hamlin and his mentality and what the effects of a race team and a series can cause on someone is an iconic moment to me. I know a lot of you may not see it that way, but that's what happened to Denny Hamlin in the 2010s. It's one of the most notable downfalls I've ever seen when it comes to a driver and his mentality. It's just very sad. Iconic. And historic in some levels. But sad. Furniture Row Racing's entire 2017 season. With the implementation of stage racing and stage points, one team took advantage of that real well. Martin Truex Jr. and Furniture Row Racing. That team had one of the most dominating seasons in NASCAR history. 8 wins, 19 top 5s, and 26 top 10s. Easily won the championship. It was a very satisfying year for not only that team, but for fans in general who root for the nice guys and underdogs. Even fans who aren't usually happy about dominance at this level were happy for Truex because he wasn't like the other drivers who were well known for this type of dominance. But there were 2 reasons why this was an iconic season for them and for NASCAR. The first being that domination from a team that has been massive underdogs for the longest time throughout their history. The team took advantage of NASCAR's new playoff system they basically ripped off of Marty Reid 10 years prior and put on a performance throughout the entire season that made things look like a randomizer of emotions. Sometimes it was shock, sometimes it was boredom, sometimes it was excitement, sometimes it was happiness. Either way, this team by itself instilled all of these emotions throughout the entire fan base on a consistent basis throughout 2017. Only on rare occasion were there ever any debates. It by far was the most dominating performance in a long time, and maybe ever. The second reason this was iconic was because 2017 was Furniture Row Racing's second to last season in NASCAR. That's right, after 2018, the team was shut down. Basically, it came down to a few factors. Barney Visser's age and health, the Joe Gibbs Racing Alliance and how much that drained them, going back to an earlier point about how Joe Gibbs Racing became the most hated, disliked, evil team in NASCAR history, and sponsorship issues. Danny B. Talks has a video that can better explain all of Furniture Row Racing's history better than I can. But this type of domination from a likable underdog team and driver will probably not be seen in a long time, if ever again. That's why Furniture Row Racing's 2017 season is an iconic moment in itself to me. All 3 championship-deciding races in 2018. One of the things that fans who despise the idea of the playoff format and a winner-take-all single race deciding finale wanted to see was someone who wasn't the most deserving in the Final 4 take it all. In 2018, that happened in all 3 finales. In the Truck Series, Johnny Sauter led the points the entire season, but with GMS secretly making plans to dump him regardless, the team didn't care about him as much as fellow finalist Justin Haley. And that wasn't saying much considering both were far behind the other 2 contenders, Brett Moffitt, who single-handedly shot Hattori Racing to relevance, and Noah Gragson, the only KBM guy Kyle Busch actually cared about. To the delight of everyone, Moffitt beat Gragson in the finale. But in actuality, if a real point system was in play, Sauter would have clinched it easily. Oh, for 1 NASCAR. The Xfinity Series was arguably the worst of the three, but only because of where the playoffs champion would have finished in a season-long point standing. Tyler Reddick was locked in from the playoffs after winning the race that had the closest finish in NASCAR history. And that was literally his only win of the season until the finale. That's right. Tyler won the season opener, and that was it. Then he won Homestead, and that would get him the title. Unlike the other two 2018 champions, Reddick wouldn't have even finished in the top 5 in points had all the races counted towards the championship. He would have finished 6th instead. Sure, his 2019 title was legit in both in full season and playoff mode, but his 2018 title leaves a little to be desired. And then there was the Cup Series. Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, and Martin Truex Jr. were the three dominant drivers in terms of win total with 8, 8, and 4 respectively. Then there was Joey Logano and his lowly 2 wins up to the finale, which tied him with Glenn Foyer at that point, and had him having less wins than both Chase Elliott and teammate Brad Keselowski, who both had 3. In addition, one of Joey's wins came via a bump and run against Martin Truex Jr. at Martinsville, which is the only reason Joey got into the Final Four. That was also the race that now features the now infamous...
May win the battle, but he ain't win the damn war.
You know where this is going. Not only did Joey Logano win the damn war, he did it cleanly, which anti-Logano people did not expect, and Truex didn't try any form of retaliation after his Martinsville rant. Sure, a lot of people wanted Truex to win because of the fact 2018 was Furniture Row Racing's last year, but when it was announced that Truex would be headed to Joe Gibbs Racing, a lot of people showed concern for Truex's future and the racer he would become, fearing he would succumb to being a whiny pest like all of Joe Gibbs Racing's chosen ones throughout the 2010s. And now they weren't sure if Truex was going to be the same guy as he has been. That well, there were also a few rooting for Logano. Because Busch and Harvick were already massively hated, and while some see Logano in the same fashion, they were starting to see Truex that way too. With Truex going to Gibbs in the future, most saw Logano as the lesser of 4 evils, so to speak. Moffitt was one thing. Reddit was the extreme. But when Logano won, which once and for all flat out embarrassed NASCAR's playoff format, the extreme anti-Logano fans, well...
It's over! Fucking NASCAR is over! Pack it up, put it on a hauler, and send it to the fucking junkyard! This is a fucking travesty! Why? Fucking why?
The entire finale was iconic because it proves everything the old school-esque race fans like myself have been saying all along. The chase was stupid since day one. The playoffs were stupid since day one. Auto racing is not a stick and ball sport. We don't need playoffs. Also, if 2018 didn't convince you we didn't need this format, then Matt Crafton win the 2019 Truck Series Championship while not winning a race the entire season most certainly should have. With new changes being made in the future in terms of the schedule while also wanting to have signs of the past returning, this would be the perfect time to go back to true roots. A new era for new era race fans where, like that of every year prior to 2004, every single race matters. But seriously and honestly, the year that NASCAR should have died and been done and over with is the year we'll discuss next. Because if you think 2018 was bad, you've seen nothing yet. Without a shadow of a doubt, the absolute worst year, not only in this decade, but in NASCAR history. The year that nearly killed NASCAR all by itself. And for all intents and purposes, should have, was 2015. 2015 start to finish was nothing but agony, misery, controversy, pain, suffering, and rage. There were absolutely no bright spots in this horrendous year, both on and off the track. From start to finish, the first notable event, for better or worse, was the announcement that Jeff Gordon was retiring at the end of the 2015 season. A lot of people were sad, me not being one of them, that one of the last connections to the 1990s was leaving the sport as a driver. And then before the Daytona 500, we had the most illegitimate suspension not caused by a questionable drug test or payback of any sort against Kurt Busch. This suspension was caused by a story that absolutely no one bought into except NASCAR. And even after that suspension, NASCAR pulled back on that after 3 weeks, when it was revealed that the entire thing, much like the accuser's life, was garbage. Also before the Daytona 500, this time in the Alert Today Florida 300 Xfinity race, this happened.
They can't do this for 10 laps. Eric Jones around. Back across the field. The big one, part 2 at Daytona. Yeah, they can't do this.
Stay high. Nice straight. Did anybody hit you there, Kel?
A horrific crash for Kyle Busch, who slid through the infield grass and went head-on into the inside wall. And you see Kyle here being tended to by medical officials. And he is alert and obviously talking, and that's a great sign.
This crash, caused by Kyle Busch, ends up injuring Busch's right leg and left foot. This ends up being the crash that mandates inside walls to have a safer barrier installed at all tracks. Not this one.
The whole car just came up off the ground, and I don't see any safer barrier.
Not this one.
What a break that was for Gordon, but look on the high side. Oh, Gordon comes up.
Oh, he got Kenseth. Oh, and there goes Jeff. Jeff's in the inside wall.
Hard into the wall. Caution will wave. Caution will wave. The field is frozen. We'll be coming back to 4 to go.
But this one. That crash also means neither Busch brother would be in the Daytona 500. And though Kurt returned after a few races, it takes Kyle way longer to make a return. His return would be at the Coca-Cola 600 at the end of May. Kyle would end up missing 11 races. But more on Kyle later. Before that return, NASCAR on Fox and the NASCAR community overall will dealt one of the harshest blows they had in 2015 in April. A few days before the 2019 Food City 500, beloved pit reporter and backup announcer Steve Burns was admitted to a hospital for respiratory issues relating to his battle with head and neck cancer. NASCAR was in Bristol that weekend, and the people of Bristol and NASCAR on Fox quickly came up with something special, modifying the name of the race to have it called the Food City 500 in support of Steve Burns. The race itself dragged on forever due to constant rain, ending the race way later than it should have. Yeah, Matt Kenseth won, which was ironic for reasons not relating to the rest of the season, but 2 days later...
Good evening. Welcome into NASCAR Race Hub. It's a sad day for all of us at Fox Sports and in the entire NASCAR world. We learned earlier today that our good friend Steve Burns passed away after a long fight against cancer.
The way Bristol ended up being, support all throughout the day, with the skies opening up every so often as if the heavens knew what was coming, seemed poignant of what was to come with losing Steve only 2 days later. The Kenseth win made more sense when in the NASCAR Race Hub special, Matt himself said...
After a race, I was in a really bad mood, and he came to try to interview me, and I did the interview, but I kind of gave him a dirty look, and I'm like, well, how much longer? Because we're sitting there waiting on the commercial or something, I don't know, and I was in a very foul mood, so I very much offended him, and I knew I did, and I apologized, and he's kind of kind of stubborn like me, so I had to find him the next week and apologize again. And then I had to find him the week after that and apologize again. And then, so finally he forgave me, and I then became his favorite driver.
This ended up being one of the saddest events of the entire year for all forms of motorsport. But unfortunately, not the last one. After Kyle Busch's return, many had questioned whether he should be given a waiver to qualify for the playoffs for missing over 10 races, 11 to be exact. Well, most everyone sided with Kyle not getting one, NASCAR being NASCAR did give Kyle one, which would turn out to be an horrendous mistake later on. When NASCAR returned to Daytona, it also had NBC making their long-awaited return to NASCAR. Except rain pushed the race all the way back to an alarming 11 o'clock at night. No joke. The race itself was popular because Dale Earnhardt Jr. ended up winning, but no one was talking about that because Kevin Harvick caused this.
Junior will win at Daytona! And the big one happens behind them. Oh my God. Of Austin Dillon into the catch fence. All the crews getting out to that car to assist these drivers. Thumbs going up from all the crew members, and the crowd roars. Look at the catch fence on the front straight. Members pulling. Austin Dillon out. He's walking. The damage to the 4 of Kevin Harvick. What an incredible sight to see Austin Dillon walking away from that 3 car that is demolished.
This big one at nearly 2 in the morning would end up seeing Austin Dillon fly into the catch fence. Brad Keselowski, who was far behind, lost his brakes and lost control of the car, making the car hit Dillon while he was upside down. Minus a bruised tailbone, Austin was okay. A lot of people calling it a miracle. Also, this will not be the last time this segment talks about Kevin Harvick causing a crash. After much talk about that crash along with Kyle Busch all throughout the summer and nearly nothing else within that time, the later part of that summer took a very dark turn with notable tragedies all over late July and all of August, not only in NASCAR, but across all major forms of motorsports. Formula One lost drivers Jules Bianchi, Monster Jam lost Dalton Milliken, who was the son of the NHRA's Clay Milliken, IndyCar lost Justin Wilson. All 3 of these were due to crashes, and 2 of them in the respective motorsports. The tragedy that NASCAR went through in that time frame mimicked the one in April when Buddy Baker, like Steve Burns only a few months prior, was also lost to cancer. We had hoped the on-track action could find a way to make this year bearable at this point. It didn't. Once the playoffs rolled around, NASCAR decided to become an absolute train wreck. Things started simple enough until we got to Dover. Kevin Harvick had 2 horrendous runs at Chicagoland and Dover and was on his way out of the playoffs. But everyone knew with NASCAR's track record that NASCAR would hand him Dover, and that's exactly what happened. In fact, not only was the entire race led by 3 different mega baddie racers, but 355 of the 400 laps were led by Harvick, including the last one. Things got worse when Kansas was up, when Matt Kenseth did what is now known as a douchey-booshy block, not once, but twice, in the closing laps against Joey Logano, spinning himself out. But more on him later. And then Talladega happened. With the 3 green-white checkered attempts rule in place, NASCAR decided to change the rules in the middle of the game. The race should have ended after this attempt right here.
Spins his tires. Green flag back in the air. Around goes to 48.
Caution's out.
And the caution is out. That will now determine who wins this race. That they're saying that's not an attempt. NASCAR's saying not an attempt.
But NASCAR decided to make up a rule right then and there, declaring it not an attempt, and was going to try it again, much to everyone's frustration. Not knowing Kevin Harvick, one of NASCAR's guys, was losing an engine. Early enough, Harvick purposely caused a big one, and since the leaders were by the line, the caution was thrown and the race was ended with Joey Logano the winner. The caution saved Harvick, who should have been eliminated in the last round, let alone this round. And no one except Harvick was happy. I'm not even sure Joey Logano was happy. Much like the unfairness of making up a penalty just to screw Martin Truex in 2013 after a debatable event involving Clint Bowyer, more on that later, NASCAR much more easily this time by should have penalized Harvick for race manipulation and thrown him out of the playoffs and add another driver. Probably Dale Jr. since he was close to getting the win at Talladega, but NASCAR essentially said, nope, we want Harvick in, not Jr. Honestly, if they did something like that, it probably just ended a fellow mega baddie like Matt Kenseth with some BS excuse not to add Jr. And then at Martinsville, hypocritical cowardly idiot played the hypocritical cowardly idiot card. Being screwed by himself multiple times at Charlotte, himself at Kansas, Kevin Harvick at Talladega, and then Kurt Busch wrecking Brad Keselowski into him at Martinsville, Matt Kenseth decided to be the hypocritical cowardly idiot he is and did this.
And Kenseth cleared by Logano. Maybe no. Kenseth takes him out. Logano into the wall. Caution comes out and the crowd roars.
Why are they cheering him? This was pathetic. Not even my dad, who was pro-Joe Gibbs, agreed with this. This tore the fan base apart and led to another mega baddie, the aforementioned retiring Jeff Gordon, to get yet another win he shouldn't have. To make this worse, the fans were split. Massively split. NASCAR did nothing to help. The fans that were pro-Kenseth said he should have been punished whatsoever, while those who were anti-Kenseth said he should be suspended the rest of the year. NASCAR had the dumb idea to suspend him 2 of the last 3 races, and it pissed everyone off. No one was happy with what NASCAR had done, and few were happy with Kenseth, Denny Hamlin being one of the few who defended Kenseth's actions publicly. Remember what I said earlier about Hamlin becoming unhinged earlier? Matt Kenseth single-handedly made Joey Logano likable, which would have been unheard of 2 years prior. But this is what Joe Gibbs Racing has become. A total joke. But the worst of it on track was still yet to come. Texas was the next race, and the fans, for whatever reason, loved it when Jimmy Johnson passed Brad Keselowski for the win, and now wanted to hate on Brad. For what? What does Brad or Jimmy have to do with any of the garbage mentioned that entire year up to that point? Nothing! Were the majority of the fans being brainwashed by the mega baddies and those in relation to them, like Jimmy Johnson is with Jeff Gordon? And then Phoenix happened! Oh, sorry, Jeff Gordon Raceway. No joke. To the surprise of many, an actual good guy won the race, and it was Dale Earnhardt Jr. Was NASCAR trying to save face at this point because they were going to fail hard? Because, as for the points title race, Martin Truex Jr. denied NASCAR its perfect Final Four. With Kenseth eliminated by his own doing as a sacrifice, NASCAR's perfect Final Four at that point would have been Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, Jeff Gordon, and Carl Edwards, the 4 remaining mega baddies in Cup alongside Kenseth. Truex denied Edwards by 1 point, so there was a glimmer of hope a miracle could happen. It didn't. Not only did the 3 mega baddies get the top 3 positions, the driver who shouldn't have even been in the playoffs to begin with, one of the 2 drivers no one wanted to see win the title, won it all. In addition, those 2 finished 1-2 not only in points, but in the race. But it wasn't just the fact that Kyle Busch was handed the championship on a silver platter. It was also the fact that NASCAR handed him the Homestead win with a Phantom Debris caution, denying us a great battle between Brad Keselowski and Kyle Larson for the win. NASCAR got exactly what it wanted and then some, and nobody was happy. Honestly, that was the year I wanted to, and looking back on things ever since that has happened, should have quit watching NASCAR altogether and doing things on this channel. In addition, a lot of people quit NASCAR altogether after that play-oof run by NASCAR. I boycotted NASCAR the following year after this, and the introduction of the caution clock for trucks. I only ever returned to this channel because I didn't want to leave those who I called my YouTubian buddies. I wanted to entertain them while giving my thoughts on things, though my passion for NASCAR by this point was completely gone. Even with Johnny Sauter winning the 2016 truck title, my passion is still gone. I feel like I'm just here to associate with people now. 2015 is a year that is very iconic for a boatload of reasons. Bad reasons. Reasons that if or when NASCAR does die, it will be looked at as the year that started not the downfall, but the downward spiral. NASCAR's return to dirt, the inaugural Mudsummer Classic at Eldora in 2013. No national touring series of NASCAR competed on dirt since before the Winston era of NASCAR. In the early 2010s, fans were wondering if they were ever going to see a NASCAR dirt race ever again. In 2013, they got their answer. 1 year after their return to Rockingham, NASCAR made a return to dirt with the Truck Series going to Eldora, a track owned by Tony Stewart. Initially dubbed the Mudsummer Classic, this event instantly became a fan favorite. Using a format similar to traditional dirt races, the action was extreme from start to end. While Austin Dillon ended up being the winner of the inaugural event, the talk of the entire event was Norm Benning. Norm wanted so badly to be in this event. His truck had issues, though, and he had to get in through the last chance qualifier. At the end, Norm was battling Clay Greenfield for the last spot in the race.
Greenfield sideways. The white flag flies one more time around.
Norm's holding on to her.
Jimmy Willer's right there, the 07. That is the battle. 57 right now has it for 5th.
Here comes Norm Benning trying to make it into the most historic truck race he's ever been a part of. In front of this pack, the 54, but the slide job once again by Greenfield. Can they hold on? They're door to door, side by side.
Come on,
Benning hangs on. That's the final transfer spot.
Norm made the race and got his signature moment in NASCAR. Even other drivers were happy for the finish and that Norm made the race. Though the race itself wasn't as memorable as that last chance qualifier and its ending, the event has become a main staple that is can't miss. Whether you call it the Mudsummer Classic, the Eldora Dirt Derby, or whatever the heck Vince Welch called it in 2018.
Through 3 and 4, who's going to win it? The Dirt Derby.
The introduction of Throwback Weekend at Darlington. The Southern 500 is a massive staple in NASCAR. The Labor Day Classic at Darlington is a popular event among NASCAR fans. So imagine our surprise when in 2004 the Southern 500 not only lost its name but was moved to November. What? Yeah, no one liked it. While I got the Southern 500 name back in 2009, it took longer for it to come back to Labor Day weekend. The return was well welcomed, though. But everyone decided to go a step farther. Hence, Throwback Weekend was born. And man, has it been a success. Most of the race teams partook in this phenomenon, painting up cars like their famous and beloved paint schemes of the past, and the tradition has grown ever since. A lot of interesting moments have happened that made people reminisce about the past. It had some funny moments during the event too, whether it be the clothing.
On the 24 of Chase Elliott looks different this weekend.
It's black and gold 13. That's a throwback to Smokey Unick's 1963 Impala.
Who is he throwing back to? Our very own Kyle Petty.
When you guys were first covering this sport, you would see fans in the back of trucks standing on station wagons just trying to get a view of the track.
Ken Squire on commentary.
Squire here, pleased, honored, humbled to be beside two of the all-time greats in NASCAR championship racing. Ned Jarrett, son there, I guess you know BJ from other opportunities, huh?
Yes.
All right.
Or the hilarity of Richard Petty being black flagged in 2017.
Okay, they've added a lap, and I'm pretty sure it's because the King won't come off the track. Richard Petty has stayed out on the track again, and I think he was supposed, it was an honorary position, but I think he's taking this seriously now. He wants to stay out there and run with these guys.
Rick, you going to tell him to come off?
I'm not going to tell him to come off.
I didn't think so.
It's good to be the King. It's
right?
good to be the King.
Oh, you can't black flag the 43?
The King is having fun.
The King can do whatever the King wants to
and
do.
look at Richard in this car. Look at that seat. That's an original seat. That's what you guys. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say that to you, Jeff. But that's what the drivers used to drive back in the late '60s, early '70s.
Well, the King has led 1,237 laps of the Southern 500.
And
I think at 1,300.
And counting, yes. And yep, sure enough, they did. They gave the King the black.
No.
I'm not sure the communication is getting to Richard Petty right now as far as him coming off. I think he's following the pace car, thinking he just needs to follow the pace car.
I think he's having fun. That's what I think.
Absolutely.
He's entitled to it.
Looks like brainless Francis stupidity actually made the past more popular than the fans of today's generation could have ever imagined, making the Southern 500 not only more popular than ever, but more iconic than ever. The 2013 Drive for COPD 300 ending, aka the infamous Kyle Larson Catch Friends crash. Daytona has had a lot of infamous crashes in its history, but only a few of those have actually injured fans. The three most notable ones were Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s flip in 1997, where the hood flew off Ernie Irvin's car and into the grandstands in the backstretch. The well-known Jeff Bodine truck crash in 2000, where some fans were injured as a result of the fire. And this one.
33, and contact! Smith turned around. Tony Stewart is going to win this race. What a terrible crash coming to the finish.
This is a big wreck.
Kyle Larson's car with the front end severely torn off.
Coming to the checkers, Reagan Smith blocked Brad Keselowski, and the crash was on. Literally everyone except race winner Tony Stewart crashed, including Kyle Larson, whose car pierced the catch fence and tore the engine out. The fact a car hit the catch fence wasn't the iconic part. That's happened a few times throughout the turn of the millennium. It's the part that Larson's engine pierced the catch fence that's the iconic part. All the drivers in that crash were okay, but there were injuries to fans in the grandstands. This is the last notable instance I'm aware of in which this actually happened. And though the racing at Daytona and Talladega hasn't really gotten safer, the catch fences have. In addition, this caused NASCAR to make changes to where the engines cannot be separated from the cars in the instance of a crash. NASCAR is always so reactive to safety precautions instead of proactive to them. I only have to say 2 words. 2. And you'll know exactly which event I'm talking about. Jet dryer. Juan Pablo Montoya is one of the most known drivers in all of auto racing with many different accomplishments. He's won in Formula 1, NASCAR, kart, and IndyCar. He's competed in the Prelude to the Dream. He's won the Rolex 24 and the Indy 500. He's won championships in both IndyCar and kart. However, most race fans of today, and maybe most people in general, will only know Juan Pablo Montoya for only one thing. The jet dryer incident in Daytona of 2012. After a rain delay that extended into the next day, and then later that night, it would have been totally understandable if NASCAR called the race after that. But then, of course, NASCAR has a contingency plan for that. They have a contingency plan for cleaning up jet fuel from a racetrack, but not safety aspects concerning the driver when a driver crashes unless it happens to one of their guys. Okay. So unfortunately, we couldn't see Dave Blaney win the Daytona 500, and instead we had to wait late into the night just to see one of NASCAR's guys and Matt Kenseth get the win. Just as NASCAR planned it, right? Other things came off that jet dryer incident, though. Amazing TV time for Dave Blaney and Tommy Baldwin Racing. Tide got one of the most impromptu commercials of all time. Brad Keselowski tweeted out that picture that put NASCAR on the social media map. And the 2012 Daytona 500 became one of the most known Daytona 500s of all time. If only the jet dryer incident was the finish. It would have been so much better if it was. Oh well, it could have been stranger for Daytona. Oh, wait.
Justin Haley has won his first ever Monster Energy Cup Series race.
That was awesome, man. You know, I mean, I didn't do anything.
The Kyle Busch-Ron Hornaday incident at Texas 2011. In 2011, Kyle Busch and Ron Hornaday were racing together at the Fall Texas truck race. While trying to pass a lap truck, Ron got loose and was forced to go up into Kyle Busch, resulting in both hitting the wall. Though this triggered a caution, Kyle Busch was gonna Kyle Busch anyway.
Not happy at all. It's all good, dude. And Kyle Busch is gonna turn over and three into the wall. Our championship contender Hornaday in the wall.
Well, Kyle Busch should be parked for this race and maybe the rest of the season for that.
Holy cow, I can't believe he did
Championship
that.
contender Ron Hornaday hard into the wall. Kyle Busch sends him in.
You all right?
You know, we saw him playing games like that at Martinsville, but we're running over 180 miles an hour here.
Window net down on the 33 of Hornaday.
Kyle wrecked Hornaday and himself on purpose. Phil Parsons made that now famous quote. Kyle got suspended for the rest of that weekend, but not for the rest of the year. NASCAR never suspends their guys, as proven by past history, unless it was something egregiously bad that people demand some form of punishment, like that of Matt Kenseth and his illogical cowardice move from Martinsville 2015. Honestly, I feel like NASCAR only suspended Kyle for 2 reasons. A, Hornaday threatened to buy a ride in the Cup race that weekend and crash Kyle there, and B, prior to that race, there was a feeling in the air that Hornaday was going to make a late-season charge and some sort of magical run for a 5th championship. Perhaps Kyle unknowingly ruined NASCAR's plans for the Truck Series that year, and that's why he was punished? Seems illogical, but I wouldn't put it past NASCAR during that era. Right, Carl Edwards? Oh, and speaking of... one incident in NASCAR in the 2010s was so egregious, so horrendous, so pathetic, and the penalty was so non-existent, it started a revolution of absolute atrocity and a mindless acceptance for horrendously dirty racing and illegitimate retaliations. The fact the perpetrator of this incident isn't in jail right now says all you need to know about the type of driver, style, and attitude that's accepted today. And part of why this sport has fallen so far, where this is declared acceptable because it's one of the sanctioning body's guys. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of Carl Edwards, attempted murderer. Carl Edwards and Brad Keselowski have had a weird history together. It mainly started at the 2009 Air 499 when Carl Edwards did a douchey-booshy block that would change him forever. He wrecked himself and got airborne when he was hit by Ryan Newman. Since then, the two have had minor incidents in the Nationwide Series. But then came Atlanta 2010. Early in the race, Carl did, you guessed it, a douchey-booshy block on Brad Keselowski. Carl ends up wrecking himself and Joey Logano. Towards the end of the race, though, Carl did something that solidified his status as the most evil driver in NASCAR history.
And the 99 has turned over Brad Keselowski.
And we have a caution.
My goodness.
I don't know if I'm okay.
Keselowski was on track for a 6th place finish.
Boy,
and we're told there was contact between Edwards and Keselowski.
And have we seen that somewhere once before?
Talladega last year and early in this race at lap 41.
A little crossover move here by Carl. Clean here, clean here. Just slight contact. Look at that thing go.
Carl took out Brad Keselowski on purpose because of all of the incidents between the two over the last year. The vast majority of them caused by Carl. The fact that Brad ended up flipping made the situation way worse than expected. NASCAR parked Carl for the rest of the event, not that it matters since he was already laps down. But now the question was, how many races was Carl going to sit out? I myself thought it'd be a minimum of 2, followed by a $500,000 fine and a 200-point penalty, and probation until the end of 2011. Instead, Carl literally only got a 3-week probation. That was literally it, a 3-week probation for that at Atlanta. NASCAR flat out told us that they are going to allow drivers to murder other drivers at that point. If Carl's retaliation took place at a track like Martinsville or Bristol or even Richmond, we'd be saying, oh, Carl's just being an idiot blaming Keselowski for the incident that Carl caused. What an idiot. No, instead, this was Atlanta, one of NASCAR's fastest tracks. Only a 3-week probation for an illegitimate, inexcusable retaliation at Atlanta is pathetic. And I'm not the only one to think this.
Disappointed with NASCAR. They had a chance to make a point and say this is where the line is, and they're being wishy-washy again. I don't believe that Carl Edwards did not believe or know that this car was going to get into the air, because we've had cars get in the air at Daytona and Talladega, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then NASCAR says, "Oh, we're just going to slap his little pinky here with a wet noodle, and that's it."
Kyle Petty had this to say in the New York Times, quote, "To me, it's just another inconsistent ruling that makes no sense. I think we took ourselves away from just being a sport to being a sideshow in some ways. We're not a sport. Sports have rules. My grandfather raced in this sport. My father raced in this sport. I did, and I had a son that came along. I love this sport more than anything in the world. To me, this is one of the saddest days I've ever experienced in the sport."
How about Robbie Gordon? Just heard the news. I wonder what would have happened to me in that situation. Someone playing favorite? Wow.
Carl Edwards became the most evil driver in NASCAR history, and to some in all of racing history. This incident is where I started rooting for Brad Keselowski. That's right, this incident is what made Brad Keselowski a NASCAR dozen member. I knew NASCAR had some sort of hate on for him based on how light Carl Edwards got off, and especially even after Carl tried to murder Brad again at Gateway 2010. That's right, the story actually continued.
Back on the inside. Whatever happens now, this race. Oh, no! Keselowski gets into Edwards. They save it. Drag race down the backstretch now.
That's that half car length I was talking about. They both survived it. Let's see what happens in turn 3.
Reed Sorensen waiting in the wings. Here's Keselowski on the inside. Carl Edwards, can he make it stick on the outside? Brad thought he had the best car all night. Took the inside line in the restart. This is going to be down to the wire. Whoa! Touch. He spun out. Carl gets into Keselowski. Carl Edwards will win.
That's it. Checker flag. Star, man. You are the man. He deserves it. Good job.
I just hope Keselowski's okay here. That was a hard hit, guys. That was ugly.
Direct behind you. Just
That
slow
was
it down.
ugly.
Slow it down. There's a big wreck here.
Big contact on Keselowski as the other cars racing to the finish came to the line.
This is the perfect example explaining the difference between a bump and run and a dump and run. This is now twice in less than a 6-month span that one driver tried to murder another and nothing was done about it. In the case of Gateway, all that happened was that Carl got a 60-point penalty, which negated the spots Keselowski lost, and in addition, they put Edwards and Keselowski on probation the rest of the year, just so Brad wouldn't have a legit chance to go after precious little Carl in order to not jeopardize the chances of a championship. Which, by the way, Brad won the championship in Nationwide that year. But as a result of all this, illegitimate retaliations have become rampant in NASCAR this decade. None of the perpetrators have ever been punished correctly. The penalties, if any, that were given were always too light. More often than not, there was no penalty. And even in one instance, the victim was penalized. The victim! And this thirst for dirty, evil drivers started with one man's quest to murder another. Not dump, not wreck, not to teach a lesson to, not just spin out, but murder. I despise Carl Edwards with a passion, and I'm glad that bitch is finally out of the sport. But more on that later. The 2015 Coke 0400. Since I already discussed this earlier in another segment, here's a short synopsis. It was NBC's return to NASCAR at 11 o'clock at night after an all-day rain delay. Then past 1 a.m., Dale Earnhardt Jr. wins the race. But while doing so, Kevin Harvick causes this.
Junior will win at Daytona! And the big one happens behind them!
Oh my God!
With much concern for Austin Dillon, he ends up being okay, causing an even bigger celebration for that than even that of Dale Jr. winning the race. Also, how was Harvick not pummeled for this? The 2012 Ford 400, aka Dodge's farewell. In 2001, Dodge made their return to the Cup Series with multiple teams. Along the way, they got a lot of classic wins that many will remember for a long time. Too bad that era only lasted 12 years. Though development of a 2013 car was in the works for Dodge, a half year later before the playoffs, reports indicated, then later confirmed, that Dodge decided to leave the sport after the 2012 season. This means the 2012 Ford 400 would be Dodge's finale. And what a way for them to go out. There were 3 championship contenders going to Homestead that year. One of them was Brad Keselowski, who was driving for Dodge. Sure enough, another one of the contenders, Jimmy Johnson, had mechanical issues, and all Brad had to do was survive and beat out Clint Bowyer, and Brad would win the championship for Dodge in their last season in Cup. It was a bookended journey for Dodge in their brief return to the Cup Series, starting with Bill Elliott's pole in the 2001 Daytona 500 and ending with Brad Keselowski's championship in 2012. It didn't really occur to me until just now the correlation between those two moments not only being Dodge's bookended journey in their brief return, but also the fact that the 2 drivers that were involved in this was the very first member of the NASCAR dozen and the most recent member of the NASCAR dozen. This was an iconic moment for Dodge fans while making us wonder what could have been if Dodge would have continued in NASCAR. Most fans still hope and long for a new manufacturer to fill the void and to challenge those 3 other manufacturers in the future. And most of them hope Dodge will return. But unfortunately, that isn't likely at this point. Also, Drunk Brad!
That's pretty simple, right, guys? We did it!
The 2013 Federated Auto Parts 400, aka Spingate. The reason people were up in arms over Kevin Harvick's race manipulation in 2015 and the lack of punishment afterward is this event that happened 2 years prior. With Ryan Newman leading the last race before the playoff at Richmond and about to win, which would eliminate Martin Truex Jr. from the playoff, Clint Bowyer was told to spin on purpose, which he did. On the restart, Carl Edwards got the lead and the win. Newman was out and Truex got in as a result of Newman not winning. Now you think NASCAR would be happy about one of their guys winning. That was until ESPN started snooping.
Well, the whole finishing order of this race turned around when Clint Bowyer spun out, running in 16th position with 5 laps to go in the race. Bowyer spinning and the changing circumstances that resulted, allowing his Michael Waltrip teammate Martin Truex Jr. to make it into the chase, will naturally set some of the conspiracy theorists abuzz.
$39's gonna win the race. Well, that kind of sucks. 9 more right here. Is your arm starting to hurt? I bet it's hot in there, itching. Oh, yeah. Right with you, 88. Right with you. Right with you. Right with you.
So those are some of the circumstances. Jamie is with Clint Bowyer right now.
Well, Clint, we just watched some of the replays, and we heard the radio. And people that hear that radio, somebody asking you if your arm's hurt or if the car's getting hot, they're going to want to know, did you spin on purpose to help your teammate?
No, I think we had a flat tire or something. I mean, we went from leading the race and got back there, and, I mean, they were driving off from us. I got down in there, it kept getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And then the 88 got in there, and by the time I got back to the gas, he got into me, and I had so much wheel in it, it just snapped around. But just sucks. I mean, the whole weekend was looking good. We led, got caught in the pits. That's the third week in a row we were leading and had a legitimate shot at win, and just got caught in the pits again, and wasn't our night. You never want to be, that guy, and unfortunately changed some things up there at the end. Super proud of Patty and everybody for giving me another great race. Car is capable of winning, and we got to get this bad luck behind us, but nonetheless we're running well, and I feel like we're still contending, a car capable of contending for a championship.
Junior, you were behind the 15. What did you see?
He just spun right out. That's the craziest thing I ever saw. The thing just came right around. We were going into through 3 and 4, and I don't know if they can put up his brakes and his gas. We got all that technology, but he was hemming around on the brakes and jerking the car around, and then the thing just spun out. It was crazy. I don't know what was going on, but he was right there. I almost run into him, so I'm just glad we were able to get out of there with no trouble.
We just saw the replay of the Clint Bowyer spin. The question now is, did he do it intentionally to help his teammate Martin Truex Jr. get into the chase?
I hate it when you look at me first.
All right, I'll go to the end of the table.
I tell you,
what do you think?
It's a deal where, in my opinion, it looked very, very strange. I mean, I just took his hand and spun the car backwards as it spun out. Dale Jr. goes, what in the world's going on? This looks strange. From what we heard from the in-car radio and the engine sound and all that, it appeared as though he spun the car out to help his teammate. I can't verify that. It's just what it looks like to me.
Well, we get paid as analysts, and all I can give you is my opinion as an analyst, listening to the in-car radio, watching his hands, listening to the engine. He spun that car out on purpose.
Wow, I tell you, I would hate to think that they would take a chance on ruining their credibility in that racing organization, Michael Waltrip Racing, as well as Clint Bowyer's reputation as being a hard-nosed short-track racer. You want to see things take place on the racetrack and guys race for positions and win with integrity, win with character. Rusty, you're most qualified to answer the question whether or not he spun that car out. It looks very suspicious, and if they did that, it'd be very, very disappointing.
Well, I'm sure this will be a topic of conversation as we continue to head into this chase and as we go into Chicago.
NASCAR did an investigation and found Michael Waltrip Racing guilty of race manipulation. Now, this is where things get complicated. First of all 3 Michael Waltrip Racing drivers, Clint Bowyer, Martin Truex Jr., and Brian Vickers, who pitted for no reason despite claims of a flat tire, were fined 50 points apiece. Second, this allowed Ryan Newman to get back into the playoff, kicking Truex out. Third, NASCAR, for the hell of it, added a 13th driver to their system, one of their guys, Jeff Gordon. The problem here isn't just that they just added Jeff Gordon for the hell of it. It's also the fact that Bowyer and Vickers' points penalties were meaningless. Vickers wasn't running for cup points that year, so his penalty didn't matter. In addition, Clint Bowyer's penalty was negated entirely by the points reset. Basically, this was to screw Truex, and only Truex, who had no idea about any of this whatsoever. If they would have just added Newman and Gordon, that'd be one thing. But NASCAR at this point was out to stick it to Truex and only Truex. This iconic moment resulted in Truex becoming a fan favorite, the end of the relationship between Michael Waltrip and Napa, with Napa going to Chase Elliott's nationwide team, Bowyer becoming massively hated, which Vickers was used to, so his status didn't change. Also, in terms of me and my racing group, the Bowyer fan of our group now hates ESPN as a result of this because he thinks that they generated a fake story just to create a storyline, and NASCAR went with it. Graylight, I hate to tell you this, but that's not what happened here. He still hates ESPN today and loves it that NASCAR dumped them later on. NASCAR made a hard stance against race manipulation and showed that it would not be tolerated. As long as it doesn't detriment their guys in terms of points. Right, NASCAR? The 2011 Ford 400, aka the tiebreaker. Honestly, I feel like 2011, 2012, and maybe 2013 was the playoff event that made NASCAR change everything once again in 2014. But anyway, for 2011, Carl Edwards unfortunately was one of the most consistent drivers throughout all of 2011. Meanwhile, Tony Stewart struggled just to get into the playoff, not winning a single event. And then Tony went on a tear. Tony won 4 of the first 9 races in the playoffs that year at Chicago, Loudon, Martinsville, and Texas. By the time Homestead rolled around, Carl led Tony by only 3 points, and with Tony locking up having more wins than Carl, with 4-1 at that point, essentially it came down to who could beat the other. Whoever beat the other at Homestead would win the championship. As you'd expect, those two finished 1-2 in the race. Stewart winning. This resulted in a tie for both Stewart and Edwards on points. The tiebreaker was most wins, meaning Tony Stewart won his 3rd championship. This is what the clods of NASCAR wanted, a playoff format where winning mattered. And they got their most dramatic one ever, and probably ever will be in this format. Much to the detriment of one of their main guys. It's not like we couldn't have a season-long format where it comes down to who can beat the other. Oh, wait.
Todd Bodine winning the race, and Johnny Benson will win the championship.
Buddy, you are the man. You are the man.
But still, this is what NASCAR wanted, and it backfired on them. The Dale Jr. concussion saga. Though it mainly started in 2002 and debatably maybe even farther back in the late 90s, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s concussion saga is iconic because it took him suffering concussions throughout the latter part of his career that made NASCAR change things again. Until the 2010s, the last notable concussion Dale Jr. had suffered depends on who you ask. Most will say 2002 at Fontana when Kevin Harvick did this.
I think Dale Jr. was trying to get in the pits, and or somebody was it. There we go.
Almost like maybe Kevin Harvick was slowing down trying to get in the pits. 29 car.
Oh, that's it. I'm telling you, that is
a brutal hit.
It is.
Kyle Petty just squeezes through there, has to go to pit road to take evasive action. So does Jeff Gordon.
That I don't like the looks of that. Well,
you can see he's awake, alert, talking to the rescue personnel.
He's I just knocked the breath out of him, I guess. I tell you, they've done such a great job with the inside of these cars and the head and neck restraint systems and everything else.
See Kevin Harvick out, his car.
He's just got. I think he's got the breath knocked out of him. Plus, I hope that's all it is. Here he is, and he sees all of a sudden there's Harvick on the outside. Oh boy. Oh wow.
Others will debate it was 2003 at Dover with this crash.
Oh, trouble for Junior. Couldn't hang on to it. Into the wall. Caution's out.
Was just trying to go faster than his car was capable of going, trying to keep up.
Junior hadn't gotten out of the car yet. You see the safety workers there working with him.
making sure everything's okay before they move them.
Yep. Yeah, very, very typical procedure.
Emergency workers putting Junior on the stretcher. They were able to get him out of the car. Anytime you see those cars hit the wall with the left side, it's always a concern.
Yeah.
But despite the other concussions and head injuries suffered by other drivers between 2002 and 2012, it took Dale Jr. suffering a concussion in 2012 that once again changed everything. It was believed that this big one at Talladega caused it, but it turns out it was a hard testing crash at Kansas a couple weeks prior to that had done the real damage. Prior to this, the only driver who notably had any concussions in the 2010s was Eric McClure, who suffered 3 in a year and a half, including earlier in 2012 at Talladega in a crash not even I can watch again. But nope. It had to be something happening to an Earnhardt that made NASCAR scramble for change. Haven't seen that before, now have we? Junior sat out 2 races and was already out of playoff contention by then, but though other drivers still suffered concussions even with NASCAR's new protocols in place, including Eric McClure yet again, the most recent change to the policy happened after, you guessed it, it was Dale Jr. who suffered another concussion, this time in 2016. Believed to have come after this crash in Michigan, Dale Earnhardt Jr. sat out the last half of the season while suffering and recovering from those effects. This attributed into Dale Jr.'s retirement from racing full-time after the following season. NASCAR ramped up their concussion policy, again, in reaction to Dale Jr.'s concussion, again. The main ramification of this outside of the concussion part of the story is that of how Alex Bowman got into the 88 as Dale Jr.'s successor. Basically being the one taking over for Jr. for a great chunk of the 2016 races and impressing a lot of people. At least Dale Jr.'s concussions isn't iconic for the worst possible reason, ahem. But I do wish that NASCAR would be more proactive in these types of things and not just do something after something happens to anyone whose last name is Earnhardt. Do you get the message, NASCAR? The 2016 Ford EcoBoost 400, aka the Crash, with multiple championship and career ramifications. This became iconic for the multiple ramifications that came along with it from this event. It felt like a normal championship race in general that was coming down to the wire, until a late restart where Carl Edwards did, you guessed it, and repeat after me, a douchey-booshy block.
Blocking, good go down low. Carl Edwards into the wall. He got tagged by the 22. Big hits by the 19. And the caution comes back out again.
That is exactly what we saw Joey Logano was going to try to do. Big fire of the 78. But that is what we thought was going to happen. Obviously, the wreck isn't what we thought. Martin Truex Jr. needs to get out of this race car.
Very aggressive on the restart. The flames rolling out from underneath the hood of the 78. Red flag comes out. Martin Truex Jr. is out of the car.
Carl wrecked himself and took many other cars with him, including Martin Truex Jr., Brad Keselowski, Casey Kane, and Regan Smith. Something else happened in that moment. Jimmy Johnson nearly made the same mistake at the same time with a near douchey-booshy block against Brad Keselowski behind both Edwards and Logano, just as Edward completed the deed against Joey Logano, right in front of them. This proved huge later on because
Jimmy Johnson wins his 7th NASCAR Sprint Cup Championship.
It was Jimmy Johnson who won the championship, and not just any championship, his 7th playoff championship. This tied him with Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt Sr. for the most titles in the 3 National Touring Series of NASCAR. But the ramifications of this entire part of the event went just beyond that. In the offseason and before Speed Weeks 2017, Carl Edwards announced his retirement. It shocked and stunned everyone, both the few fans of Edwards and the many who loathed him. It was like that last douchey Busch block was the ultimate wake-up call to him, that his actions can and have hurt others, including himself. Perhaps what he felt from that crash, and not just costing himself the championship, made him see the light for the very first time in his career. The reasons Carl gave to his retirement was to protect his long-term health, giving a hint that maybe Dale Jr.'s latest concussion saga that season was a factor, which Edwards admitted it was. As happy as I am that he's finally gone from NASCAR for good, I'm even more happier that the message finally got across to a mega baddie. That what they do does more harm than good, even to themselves. Now for others to learn that lesson. August 5th, 2018 is a day that NASCAR fans will never forget. It far and away is the most iconic day in the 2010s. It was the day of the 2018 Go Bowling at the Glen race at Watkins Glen. This ordinary Watkins Glen race would end up being extraordinary and memorable and the most iconic race in terms of good reasons in the 2010s. For so long, people were waiting for Chase Elliott to get his first win. Being the son of Bill Elliott and the technical successor of Jeff Gordon, Chase had a lot of fans on his side. He had come close so many times, yet something would always happen. Then he was against Martin Truex Jr. at the peak of his powers at Watkins Glen in 2018.
Truex is out of fuel. Truex is out. Now Chase can just cruise to victory lane.
His spotter lets him know he's out of fuel. Chase Elliott comes out of turn number 7. The crowd roars. They're going to see for the first time Chase Elliott win in the Monster Energy Cup Series.
Outdueling Truex on fuel mileage, Chase Elliott finally got his first win in NASCAR. It was a huge moment of celebration for not only the fans there, but for all of NASCAR. Jimmy Johnson pushed him to victory lane after Chase ran out of fuel after the race. Everyone was happy, and it was one of the great moments of not only 2018, but in all of the 2010s. But come on! Do you actually think that's the only reason August 5th, 2018 is the most iconic day and moment within NASCAR itself in the 2010s? Surely there had to be something else that happened that day for it to be number one on the list, right? Well, yeah, because 6 hours later...
Bad weekend for the CEO of NASCAR. Brian France was arrested over the weekend for DUI, and cops say he was also in criminal possession of oxycodone.
Brian France is facing charges of aggravated driving while intoxicated and criminal possession of a controlled substance, which police say was oxycodone.
Our sources are telling us that he was double the legal limit, around a .18, and that's really, really bad. Imagine this. The most powerful, one of the wealthiest men in all of professional sports in the world spent the night in a jail cell.
The brainless wonder was arrested for DUI and possession of oxycodone. The reactions of this were all over the place, ranging from, oh please, we already knew he was a drunk, let's celebrate Chase's win instead, to, this is the most disgraceful thing that Brian France has ever done. Yeah, this completely overshadowed Chase's win, unfortunately. As I explained in my own video about this, Brian France could be suspended and required to go through a recovery program, or he could be subjected to drug testing. And what I'm thinking at this point is, I know who's laughing his butt off more than anyone else on the planet right now about this. And apparently, I'm not the only one who said this. We always knew that Brian France was an idiot, but we didn't think it would get this bad. That this is an attempted mockery of everything he's been trying to do all this time. Here's the thing that I'm not sure people are getting. That is all we want. We don't want him out of NASCAR just for the heck of it and just to make NASCAR better. We want him out of NASCAR not only to save the sport, but to save him. Here is the thing that's alarming to me. According to the advice that I had seen, first of all, you need a prescription for it, and I'm more inclined to believe he didn't. And then under alcohol, it says avoid very serious interactions can occur. So, not only is he proving his stupidity outside of NASCAR, he's proving his stupidity in totally absurd ways not even I thought he could do. So, Brian, if you watch my video, I doubt you do, but I would love it if you watch my video. Here is something that I think you need to know right now. There are way more things that are more important right now for you than trying to run NASCAR in your crazy-fied way. To the point where, even without this, people are still gonna hate on you for what they, and people like me, believe you have done to NASCAR. Now is the perfect time to get out of this kind of ridiculousness. Because hurting NASCAR is not the issue here, dude. Hurting yourself is the issue. All of these kinds of issues that have been going on for years. The 2006 thing is the reason everyone believed you're a yahoo to begin with in terms of this situation. And this situation, 12 years later, just confirmed everything that what happened in 06 was true and what Jeremy Mayfield said about you. By the way, you owe him an apology. I suggest you do it. Twice over the legal limit plus oxycodone? You don't need to be running a sport. Especially one you have tried to kill off for so long. I know you don't think that, but that's what's happening. Yeah, it's bad when I have my own playlist with reactions to this. Let alone this has been a thing for at least 12 years. At least. Yeah, Chase Elliott getting his first win has amplified with Chase winning more races ever since. But what happened after Brainless France's DUI outside of Daytona is even more iconic. This would be the last of him being the NASCAR CEO. First taking a leave of absence, and then flat out being replaced by Jim France. Brainless France actually initially tried to fight the charge, only to come to a plea deal serving community service in exchange for being declared guilty of a downgraded misdemeanor. Kinda missed on that one, guys. Anyway, since then, Jim France has tried to get things back to how they're supposed to be in NASCAR. It's gonna take a lot of work concerning all the things that have been messed up even before that of the Brainless France era. But with his history of helping other series, it does seem doable. These two events did something that most moments don't do, ever. They completely unified the entire fan base. Everyone was so happy to see Chase Elliott get his first win, something that's been a long time coming. Yet everyone was even happier of what came of the Brainless Wonder being forced out of NASCAR. Something that has been an even longer time coming. Despite the WTF-ness of the initial news regarding the Brainless Wonder, these two events, one as positive as Chase Elliott's first Cup win, the other one as negative as Brainless France's DUI, both united the fan bases of NASCAR. Something that next to never happens. It's hard to get the entire fan base to be united over one thing. Everyone was on the same page about both of these moments that occurred on the same day. And that's why, for any and all reasons that pertain to it, August 5th, 2018 is the most iconic day and most iconic moment for NASCAR in the 2010s. I'm positive my video may have been off the wall a little bit to you guys, but I think my video was pretty okay. All of them had some sort of implication in terms of something in terms of the future of NASCAR based on when the moment started. So, for me, I think I did a pretty dang good job on this one. What do you guys think? Tell me who had the better video, me or the male counterpart. So, that's it for today. This is actually a very interesting project to work on and is a good warm-up if I decide to fully return, which is here and there, because there's still other things that I want to take care of in terms of things outside of here. But I really did enjoy doing this project. It took a lot of work because I had to do a lot of it on my phone, but still, I think it worked out pretty well. So, thank you everyone for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully we can have more interesting countdowns like this in the future, whether from me or anyone else. Thank you everyone for watching. This is Ultimate 23 Dragon. That's my final answer.